Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who waits until his wife and daughter have gone away for the weekend to dig into his closet for a Tanooki suit.
Tim Longo. Very nice.
You may not even know what that means.
No, I do actually. Tanooki, funny story that no one ever probably has heard. Our code name for our Tomb Raider team for a long time was Team Tanooki, because we thought it was funny, and we had a Japanese theme, for the game setting and stuff, and so
publisher.
And publisher, right? That was even more appropriate once
owner, I guess.
Came in there, yeah. So I had done some Tanooki research at the time and had realized that there was a Tanooki suit in Mario. So yes, full circle.
Yeah, well, we won't, I don't think, encounter a Tanooki suit in Super Mario World, which is the game that we're talking about this week, and for the weeks subsequent. Yeah, so it's, I looked it up, and I was so happy with my Tanooki suit reference, and then I looked it up, and I don't think it actually turns up in this game. I think it's in the one prior to this, and one down the road a bit, but anyway. Mario is one of those characters who casts a long shadow in video games, for a number of reasons. I mean, one, he's maybe one of the earliest identifiable characters in video games. He turns up in Donkey Kong, in the arcades. That itself had a couple of sequels.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, he's been in at least 40 titles that have his name on it, or have him as the main character. And one citation I saw was like 250 total titles,
wow,
which seemed crazy to me. And I looked, and I was like, well, okay, there's 20 versions of Donkey Kong. Can you really count that as one? Yeah, whatever. Because so ports and things like that kind of add up. But there aren't any characters that are in 40 video games. There aren't a lot of characters who are in 4 video games.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of just shocking to think about how many games I personally have played that have had a Mario in it, both in the main titles and also in kind of the ancillary, like Mario Soccer, Super Mario Strikers, or Mario Tennis, or what have you. So there's a million titles that he's appeared in. And he's kind of, in some ways, a face of maybe not the industry, but certainly Nintendo. And we finally are turning to Mario. How many games in? What are we, 10 games in, maybe? More? 12 games in?
Well, I'm kind of looking, at a couple sites. I guess it kind of depends on how you count the arcade stuff, but Mario Brothers, the first game, which was just kind of that 2-player, I don't even know what you call that, 2-player same screen, single screen platformer, where
you're talking about the arcade game, right? Where they're
and they did an NES version, I think, as well.
Yes, they did. Yep, it definitely got ported to the NES.
Yeah, and so there's two main games on the NES, and then like you said,
there are 3. There are 3 main games in the NES. This would have been Super Mario Brothers 4 if it were titled that. So the original NES shipped with Super Mario Brothers, and then there was a second one, but that wasn't released in the U.S. until much later.
Yeah.
In the U.S., the Super Mario Brothers 2 that they released was a reskin of a game I think called something like Doki Doki Panic, and don't quote me, don't email me. It's something along those lines, but it was another platformer that they basically was a little bit easier than what they released in Japan for Super Mario 2, and they reskinned it and put Mario into it to make it more palatable to Western audiences. And then there was a Super Mario Brothers 3 that we both got. And finally, with the SNES in 1990 in Japan and 1991 in the US, we have a pack-in title that launches with the Super Famicom and the Super NES, which is Super Mario World, which is what we're attacking, with this session. And it's one of 3 of the 3 kind of big 3 Super Nintendo games, and we're getting to it last, even though it's arguably the most
Yeah.
important character in the in the company's history.
Right.
Because of course we've already played Link to the Past, the Legend of Zelda title, which we started, I don't know, just a handful of months ago with episode 54, and Super Metroid, which goes back to our first year in episode 25. So people who are seeking out, have these guys ever talked, about Super NES before? We have, in those specific things. We've also talked before about what was going on in 1991. We should probably give a little refresher, but we're not going to go into any, sort of big in-depth thing. On the PC, you're talking Civilization. You're talking
Civ 1.
Civ 1, yep. Monkey Island 2. Wing Commander 2. And, a few other kind of titles. There's a lot more going on consoles at the time. You have a fourth Mega Man. Oh, you have Another World that actually would have been a PC/Apple, late Apple II kind of era game. But you've got Final Fantasy IV. You've got Super Castlevania. You've got Mega Man 4. You've got Toe Jam and Earl. I mean, these are all games that we've kind of probably mentioned at one point or another. But these are the sorts of games. Super Ghosts and Ghouls, which is another SNES title. A lot of SNES titles that are available in the U.S. in 1991, in part because it had come out 10 months before or so, maybe 9 months or so before in Japan. And so these things were all kind of becoming available fairly quickly after launch in the U.S. I want to say in November in Japan of 1990 is when when this game and the console released in Japan. And then in mid-August, early August, which kind of makes this a good time to visit this game, in 1991 here in the U.S. So we are basically on the cusp of 26 years of Super Mario World. That's kind of crazy. In related news, I just recently got my 25-year-old college reunion email, and I'm sure that's totally wrong. So.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, as I previously stated, platformers are not my forte in general. Brett plays many more of them than I do, and I think the only Mario Brothers game that I've finished was Super Mario Brothers, and that's just because Alex Noisy forced me to play through it. Oh, he didn't force me. I willingly did it. But we passed the controller and finished it.
He shamed you
in a day.
Forcing is strong, but I think he shamed
you. He did shame. Yeah. We finally did that. So I experienced that, top to bottom. But it's weird for me going. I mean, to Super Mario World specifically, because I think I probably started it at some point and put it down quickly. So I had weird memories of just starting this game this time, but played many more attempts at Mario Brothers before I ended up finishing with Alex. But Super Mario Brothers. But it's just I've been doing a little soul searching playing this game just last night and kind of going through it because I'm trying to analyze where my hangups have always been with the genre as a means to kind of get into some of the analytical aspects of what we'll talk about. So, I'll go into that maybe later as we get into it. But yeah, I mean, seminal character, like it's,
yeah.
it is the Mickey Mouse of video games, right?
Exactly. I was going to say, if you were to ask a random, stranger on the street, what do you think of video games? What do you recognize from video games? There's only a handful of things they might say, and one of them is probably Mario. You might also get Tetris, and then you might also get, if they're politically minded, you might get Mortal Kombat because of the violence, and that getting hearings in the late 90s or whatever. But, I mean, there's a short list of things that I think you could expect literally anybody maybe in the United States to be able to say, oh, yeah, when I think of video games, I think of.
Yeah.
I think that's probably changed in the age of, mobile phones with games on them and things like that. And that's probably changed a bit. There's probably more Candy Crush, I guess.
It depends. Yeah, it depends on your demographic.
Yeah, exactly.
But I, there's been various studies that I've seen over the years, where you do the typical like what are the popular characters in video game genres or video game franchises, just for market research and stuff. And Mario is always number one.
Yeah,
based on
which is why I'm sure Master Chief has a mustache.
Yeah, or does he?
Or does he?
Even I don't know that answer.
Sure. Anyway, it's true. I'm more of a Mario aficionado as far as that goes, but most of my Mario experience really comes from the 3D titles. So I think I've alluded to this on past episodes, or maybe even talked it through. I've played Mario 64, Super Mario 64, Sunshine, Galaxy. I'm so looking forward to Odyssey, and I'm sure there's one or two that I'm missing. Oh, Super Paper Mario, which is kind of an offshoot. The Thousand Year Door for GameCube, which I gave to Tim, and he never played. And I have played
like 3D Super Mario 3D World, or what new Mario Brothers, new Super.
I've played some new Super Mario Brothers, so that's a 2D one. No, the Super Mario RPG or Paper Mario is sort of an RPG that was on GameCube.
Yeah. No, I was just speaking to some of the other platformers.
Yeah,
the naming convention of this.
I have played a ton, and but the naming convention is not.
This franchise is just ridiculous, but in a fun way, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why they don't call the Daniel Craig Bond movies. This is James Bond 22. I mean.
Yeah.
At a certain point, it becomes so unidentifiable and not really related.
Yeah,
and I want to reboot. And I think that in Super Mario World, that is in a sense what we're getting to go to the Super NES era. It's like we're going to take it, we're going to revitalize the franchise in some way, and we'll talk about that, to make it different from what you've had on the NES. And I think we encountered that a little bit playing Super Metroid, where I don't remember if you also did, but I went back and played some Metroid, which was also available rather from the Virtual Console, and found it like, oh wow, that's right, this is what games were like, in 1988 or 86 or whatever that had come out in.
Yeah, and I'll probably dabble with Super Mario Brothers again just to refresh my memory, because as I started playing Super Mario World, I noticed some of those additional mechanics and rule sets that they added into this one that are kind of big game changers and make things over a little more complicated than I wanted them to be, based on my memory of Super Mario Brothers, which is, I guess I'd say, much more simplified, still tightly made, but simplified in its rule set, not making it any less of a game, but just different. And I guess I was just surprised at a couple of things that we can get into later about what they're doing in this one. But you can totally see, like you said with Super Metroid, as a showing you what this system can do, and taking a beloved, character like Mario and doing a new treatment, with this. They're going to add specific features that are going to, make, have a multiplying effect on the systems, or, on the mechanics and stuff. So it makes sense. But I guess I was just a little surprised at how many things are in here that are different from the previous ones. It's a pretty big departure in some places.
Well, and I feel like we should probably just kind of dive right in terms of, like, what does this game present? I mean, to me, there's obvious presentation, totally different choices right off the bat, from an NES title to an SNES title, and it shows up right basically in the title. This is a world in some sense, even though they're different environments in an earlier Super Mario Brothers title. This is like a world in the sense, like, there's two levels of map. I mean, literally from the sort of presentational aspect, like, when you start the game, you're in a location where you're not running around and jumping and popping on characters, enemies' heads and things like that.
It's like an overworld almost.
Exactly. You're more like a Link to the past style overworld, even if it's more like a board game. You can go to this location, you can go left or right, and you just watch the character move from position to position at that point. There's still a level of presentation of, oh, I can go here and I can do things, and then I can go there and do things. And I mean, this is your first time with this game, I think, or anything like it. I've played a little Super Mario World 2, I think on the DS, maybe on the Game Boy Advance. I can't recall, but what what were your thoughts diving into this game?
Well, so confused at first,
Right.
because I was sort of like, well, so why is this an important, and this is hindsight, right? So at the time, I'm sure there's some revelatory moments for people like, oh my God, there's an overland, and I can choose what mission I'm going to play, and the world is kind of represented in this map kind of way, but I'm kind of moving through it. So it's kind of interesting, but I kind of was asking myself why, because with the exception of at least for this first island, which maybe it'll become more evident, and I would hope it would become more evident as we go on when you maybe have more choices. But there's just that one kind of choice where you can go to the Yellow Switch Palace. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, to the left. Yep.
To the left and go up that tree first if you want to, but you don't have to, which I have a story to tell about that because I went right first.
Of course.
And
well, because as a person who's played D&D since the 80s, right
rule
is right.
Yeah. Right hand rule is what I usually do. So it kind of was not a good decision in this case, because I'm not good at these games. But I guess I just kind of was left with the question of why. So, and then you can immediately just go right where you start. You just go to like Yoshi's house, which is kind of quaint and interesting. You're like, okay, I'm at his house and I can't really do anything here. Maybe that'll come into play later. But then you kind of go out, and so I don't know. I kind of like the thing that I always appreciated about the Super Mario Brothers specifically is the simplicity of the structure of things, where you kind of can trust that level 1-1 was designed from a kind of a progression standpoint to be where it is. You know what I mean? And then 1-2, and then 1-3, and it's like you're just trusting the designers, you're trusting the game. And to take a step back, some of the things that, because this is our first platformer and especially 2D, like we haven't played, I'm trying to think. Yeah, Metroid wasn't that case. This is really our first kind of traditional game where we've talked a lot about progression as a concept in various forms of progression, but this is a genre where every time you start a level, you start over, right? Like it is a fresh. You start like you carry stuff. You can carry stuff with you, but
okay, yeah.
But enemies are on loops,
right? So the levels themselves, the levels you enter are the same. Are going to be new every time you start them.
Yeah, there's just what I mean. Like,
I mean, it's not System Shock 2 where you've killed some enemies, you come back and those enemies are gone, or
even Zelda's enemies kind of respawn too, but the world state you are impacting.
That's true,
because it's an adventure, right? And Metroid as well.
There is kind of a sliding scale of like, oh, I've opened these doors, versus here where literally everything about the world is the same. Except the things that I brought with me, which might be I've changed my size, so I'm a bigger Mario, or I have the fireball ability, or I'm riding Yoshi, right? Yeah. So there's basically, I think, 3 things that you might turn up, turn up to a level with here.
But then also just the escalation of the skill progression. I just I learned to appreciate from playing, and talking to Alex a lot about this stuff with his passion for Mario and Super Mario Brothers, because it is such a finely crafted, level flow, And so here, I guess I was just, my long story short, I was just caught off guard a little bit of, wait a second, what order should I play these in? And I feel like I chose poorly because I went right and I didn't hit the switch in the Yellow Palace yet. A bunch of those blocks that are, there's just a dotted outline for, they're not present.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They were not there. So some of the harder sections of one of the levels, I just couldn't get past.
Yeah, sure.
And until I
Yeah,
went,
no, and I had the same experience. So it's not, uh, it's not, I don't think it's uncommon. It's basically 50-50, right? I mean, I don't think that there's any, without explicitly remaking that linear. And effectively, it is linear, especially for somebody who doesn't have Mario skills going into this level. You really need, like, I spent a fair number of lives just like getting through that, trying to get further and further into that level.
We're probably talking about the same level, right?
Yeah, we are. Where there's
the blocks are contracting.
Exactly. There's blocks that are spreading and contracting, and there's blocks that are just not present, but you can see their outlines. And I also went right, and I think it's 1 and maybe 2 levels in where it's like, oh, this is really hard. And for my part, I actually played through this section of the game twice. Once to kind of feel it out, a few days ago, and then again last night to just go and like, okay, I know what these levels are going to do. I'm going to do the right path and do a save game through the right path. So I ended the whole section with 8 Marios or whatever instead of none or 1, as I did. But yeah, I mean, you can totally make a choice that doesn't serve you well, moving forward. But one of the things about the Mario games is all of the skills that you'll ever have in a Mario game, you have at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, yeah.
And you may not know what they are, which is the problem. You may not know how to do, some sort of wall jump or, things like that. This may also be true of Metroid, except for the sort of abilities that you get. But you can do that, thing where you jump and you kind of slide down the wall and you do the jump up in Metroid. I forget what that's called, but that sort of sliding jump that you can do. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like a jump, yeah.
You can do that at any time, in Metroid, Super Metroid, if you know about it. But if you haven't learned it, you have no opportunity to know that. And of course, it's something that speedrunners rather make use of. But, here in Mario and going back to these 2D Marios, I don't really have a good sense of what the moveset is myself, even though I've played them a bit. Yeah. So I have a hard time, just as you did, knowing what to do and knowing what's going to come. There's a couple times where I'm like, well, maybe if I do this, I can get. I try different sorts of things that I think might work.
Yeah,
but it's more just me experimenting with. Okay, these are abilities I've seen in 3D Marios. Maybe they're here, in a 2D Mario game.
There's an experimentation, thing going on here. I guess the other surprise for me related to this is the depth of the moveset. To be honest, was a little overwhelming, and I guess I didn't anticipate that because I was like, okay, we're going classic. This is a 2D platformer, right, in the Mario vein, and I played some of that, but I'm not good at it, so I'm not drawn to it. So, but it'll be okay because this is kind of more old school. And I was like, whoa, wait a second, there's sprinting, and now there's 2 kinds of jumps. With the spin jump thing and the regular jump,
right?
And then
on 2 different buttons. Besides,
on 2 different buttons, there's sprinting or running, right? And then that augments all of that stuff. And now you have this Yoshi character that does a couple different things, and so just quickly, just in this first island, layered on these mechanics that I was like, wow, this is some deep stuff going on, and I already felt like I'm missing. So this is kind of this is a terrible segue to another point that I have about this genre for me that is a staple of it and an important part of it is this sense of, as you kind of said earlier, this sense of skill progression that you are learning through really good level design, probably some of the best ever in the industry. This sense of teaching you skills as you go, but having this depth to the skills that if you were to go back and replay a level, you could actually mastered in an even deeper way. Say once we finish this game, if we were to start it over, playing these early levels would be a completely different experience probably. And that is some of the brilliance of it. However, it is so skill centric, and I think where Metroid and Zelda, Metroid is kind of my number 2, Zelda being my number 1. And because I'm not a good Twitch gamer, other than maybe shooters, I guess, to be honest. I am a Twitch gamer in some places. I have, like, the soul searching I'm doing is why. So I don't hate, but I strongly dislike wasting my time. I have a hard time replaying things over and over again in quick succession. And if I don't feel a sense of progress and my own skill is keeping me from achieving that progress, then I get really frustrated. And that's the whole thing about this genre in these games, is this specifically about that skill where you're fine tuning your skill and you're playing this level and, over and over again in some cases. And there's a great sense of accomplishment once you do it, as I felt a little bit in that harder level we were talking about when I accomplished that level. But still, it's like pulling teeth for me, and I feel like I'm, spinning my wheels in mud or something, or just like, just not making progress. And even though mentally I know I am, because I'm learning a little bit more about the skill, but the reason I like Metroid so much is there is a sense of tactics in there that I think we even talked about in that series, and a sense of being clever with how you use the tools. It's not just the skill. And I know there is some of that in Mario 2, and people are probably yelling at their speakers in that, yeah, there's tactics in Mario and there's some of that depth. But I feel like being clever in this game is not as front and center as it is in the other two, and I like that. I like when games allow me to be thinking about how to achieve my goal versus did I execute well.
Right. Well, and I mean, two parts of that. One is a counterpoint. I mean, I feel like, the Legend of Zelda and Super Metroid both give you visual cluing in the environment that you can't do this thing yet. That you need this weapon to open this door, or you can't cross this area because you don't have the tool yet, or what have you.
They tell you there's a progression you need to find.
Exactly. They're very clear about what that progression is. I don't feel like that progression is actually necessary, with the exception of the yellow power block thing that you need to turn on the bulb. I don't feel like any of that is necessary. I feel like I didn't end up learning any new moves other than what I could do with 3 face buttons or whatever in this section. 4 face buttons maybe. I can't recall. But you can get on Yoshi and grab fruit and grab critters and things like that and have him eat them and spit them out. You can jump in 2 different ways, and you can run, and I can't remember if those are literally on 4 different buttons. But more or less, it's 3 or 4 buttons. I didn't learn any fancy jumps. I didn't learn any crazy moves. I just used those building blocks I sort of encountered as I played to get through this section.
Well, no, and that's right. I don't necessarily mean gates like that. I guess there's other ways, like learning the level and learning what certain parts of the level are doing and how they interact with you, and and when you need to do a certain thing over another thing. Like there's this sort of repetition that I think some gamers really resonate with them, right? They like that kind of like mastery of it. Sure. And it is all based on experimentation, replaying, dying, right? And we have to get to lives as a resource later too, and the whole game concept of game over, which slapped me full in the face, and I, for some dumb reason, forgot about it. I was like, wait, what? My game's over. Right. And I was like, oh no, I ran out of lives.
There are 2 different mechanisms for game over. There's like level over with a time limit.
Yeah, which I ran into once, yeah.
Which is a separate thing. And then lives, which are an overall game resource, which means you can't complete
all the way over unless you have a save, yeah.
Exactly.
And I have a funny story with the whole save state thing.
Yes, and the save thing was new.
Which I don't know if I could do the podcast without that, by the way. But I mean, I know I could, but it'd be in much different.
Well,
because I'd be complaining the whole time.
Right. Are you using the sort of Nintendo 3DS, new 3DS save functionality to get past stuff, or the in-game?
No, both. I'm trying to use the save state 3DS firmware thing, very, very minimally. I'm not trying to exploit it, but I am using it, yeah. And the quick funny story there is I accidentally turned it off on my 3DS, and I didn't know that I had. And so I didn't have the option, and I was like, oh, and I had like 2 lives left or something. I was like, wait, I can't. No! So I thought it for a bit that they actually had turned it off for certain games that they didn't want you to use it in.
Oh man!
And then I researched. I was like, no, I just accidentally turned it off. So there's like a shortcut you can turn it back on. So crisis averted there, because I was super bummed for a bit because that was kind of my ace in the hole for actually sanely making it through this thing. But it is an exploit. Like I full disclosure to the audience. Like I know using save states on the 3DS is an exploit. I would call it. It's not really a fair way. I did finish this island without it though once. Before I figured out that I could turn it back on, so I at least have that to hang my hat on. But I don't know if I'll be doing that in the future. I'll try.
Well,
I'll try.
I mean, I don't blame you. It's fine, especially at the pace that we'll play this at. I certainly don't fault you. I played on the Wii, and I don't have that functionality available to me. It's more or less a straight port, or an emulation probably, to be honest. And in fact, I need the special controller and all that stuff, just like I did for both Super Metroid and for Link to the Past. I played it through once, kind of familiarized myself with this introductory section. Familiarized myself with, okay, these are going to be the mechanics in terms of what matters, when you can save and things like that, and when you're going to get to an important point. And I did it once and didn't care and just burned lives and learned things. And then last night I played through again, and I didn't have a perfect playthrough by any means, but I only lost a couple of lives. So my alternative has been, okay, I know I'm going to die. I know it's going to go badly. I'll just go ahead and I'll play through and figure out where the rough spots are for me personally, because it's a player skill game more than either a fully like RPG style where the character has the skills, or kind of a mix, as some games we've played have been. I mean, even System Shock 2 is that to some degree. It's a pure player skill game. The game is the game. You can either do it or you can't. And the lives are kind of a way to fail somewhat gracefully, but only somewhat gracefully.
Yeah, and they're also a resource because if you get 5 of those Yoshi coins, you get a new life, and then there's obviously the infamous green
of regular coins, and if you get a green mushroom,
I didn't realize that. So if you get 100 coins, God, this tells you how little I know about Mario. But if you get 100 regular coins, you get a 1-up as well.
Right, and there's the score from jumping. At the end of each level, there's a tape that you can break. Yeah. If you can get the best on that, I think that also transmutes into a coin resource, and I'm not sure if that's the same coin resource as the regular coin count. So you get a score for that, and I think that you get an extra life for that as well, but I'm not sure.
It's just like, it is astounding, and even Super Mario Brothers, on the NES is the same way, but it is astounding at the depth in these suckers. So like it is kind of flooding back to me about just what we were talking about there with the resource economy there. Like there is so much, like the constant, speedrunning culture, whatever, like perfect playthroughs, like this, I guess mastery is just this word I keep coming back to, where, you have that in Metroid and Zelda to some degree, and Metroid more so, I guess, but these games are really heavily based on, okay, you're about to play this level, right? And this level has an identity, it has specific level design, there are rules to the level, there are locations, there are secret locations sometimes, and you're kind of like, every time you play, you might learn a little bit more about the level design of that level, and then you get better and better at it, and that concept of like knowing something like the back of your hand, I mean, it is, for me, there's shooters that kind of do that, I guess Half-Life is.
I would say, well, Half-Life is, but even more so things like Counter-Strike, where exactly, where the levels, the interactions with individual levels are fairly short, and the goal is to learn those levels really, really well so that you can get very quickly. I think that this is not quite that far. We're not going to return to any of the Yoshi's Island levels.
No, we won't, but you can see somebody
each of us did.
Well, exactly, we did, and I think, like, if you can think back, time travel back, and think of, a kid who has this game, and maybe they don't have many games in their library, that is what you're going to do, right? You're going to go in and you're going to find every nook and cranny. That's what Nintendo Power was all about, and you're going to really master it, and become skillful at it. And I don't know, maybe it's just who I am as a gamer today. It's like I guess my patience level and my skill level and my is just not there. So
Well,
I don't feel like I can plan.
I would put it a different
better.
way, though. I think that you haven't invested your skills in this sort of game.
Yeah, potentially.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
you're a shooter guy. You're probably a third-person action-adventure game quite a bit, certainly because of your Tomb Raider experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not so much. I mean, I play probably a greater variety of games that you do to a certain degree, and maybe more games than you do generally. And for me, I come to this and I go, oh, right, I have to learn these skills. And I mean, just the things that this game teaches you in this first world, and this is just a handful of the things, but it's, there are blocks that you can jump on. There are blocks that you can jump into and that they'll sort of spin if you jump into them. So they're different kind of blocks, but you can also jump onto those blocks. And sometimes those blocks spread left and right, or up and down. So maybe so there's a mechanic there. There are enemies you can jump on, but enemies you can't jump on. There are pipes you can enter, but pipes you can't. There's at least 2 types of jump that you can execute.
There's ducking.
There's ducking,
which I guess first one too.
I didn't even put that on my list. That's in the very first level, but yes. And there are shells that you can pick up and throw, both left and right, or hold on to, or throw up into the air. Levels have a time limit. I mean, there's a ton of rules that you have to learn just to get through this section, and that's not even talking about the sort of meta rules, which is there are levels where if you jump on things, it will change other levels, which is the sort of yellow, whatever they call that. Yeah, so you can go and jump on this block in this level, and it's going to turn on blocks in other levels, and that's like a whole new level of crazy. And we haven't even talked about the wire meshes that you can climb on. I'm pretty sure that, although I didn't do that and just kind of realized it afterwards, I think you can probably jump or do an action on those to flip around to the back.
Yeah, there were those squares that were...
Those squares, I'm pretty sure that's what those are for, and I forgot. And I didn't have a chance to test it before we recorded this evening. But last night I was lying in bed going, oh, that's what those are. Those show up in Mario Sunshine, for example. Wow. So, there's a ton of stuff in terms of the richness of the rule set here, and I feel like we haven't even learned all of our things that we can do. We haven't learned, we have a spin jump, but I know there's something else there. There's another way that's going to be used. Exactly.
You can spin jump into certain blocks to destroy them, right?
Oh, true. There's that. There's those same blocks that you can jump up into under that will spin. If you jump from the top with the spin jump, they'll destroy. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff, as well as all the rules that support scoring, lives, what have you. Some of these are explored in these little, I assume they were speakers. Did you know what those were supposed to be?
I didn't.
Visually, they sort of look like a speaker, like a loudspeaker or something.
That's true.
That's on a wall.
I thought they looked like a nut for some reason. I thought it was a Yoshi thing or something.
There's like a square with a brown circle-ish thing in the middle with kind of
which
a
they had similar things in Zelda, right? Where you'd go to a place and read
and talk to the wall. So there's the same sorts of things in there, but they're not very illustrative of this is what you do.
No.
I mean, there's a couple that are very like, you do this. If you do this, this will happen. Yeah. But for the most part, there's a little bit of storytelling in those. There's some boss hinting and some enemy hinting. Yoshi will help you beat this kind of enemy. Or to defeat this enemy in the final level, which is Iggy, I think, in this section, you have to knock him into the lava. So there's.
Well, and you didn't even mention the power-ups, right? Like there's
and I haven't talked about the mushroom and the fire and being able to hold on to a power-up until later. There's a lot of stuff, but those are not skills.
Oh,
so, I mean, it's trying to stick with the skills stuff that you learn and sort of the world rules. but there are things that empower the player in different ways. I haven't found a lot of use for the fireballs yet, which was a thing that I used a ton in the original Super Mario Brothers. You'd run and just kind of like bash on the, I don't know, B button or whatever to.
When I had it, I think I was luckily I was able to carry it forward into the boss level maybe, and it was pretty effective in there.
Yeah, I bet it would be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I tended more to like just lean on Yoshi, but also just lean on my skill because I am, as we've kind of talked about, I'm a little bit more comfortable in platformers generally. So
yeah, I have a hope playing through this, which I don't want to kind of be like the Debbie Downer of this, because one of the hopes and things I'm excited about is because for the podcast I must finish this. I don't have a choice.
2017, your platformer coming out party.
Yeah, exactly. I do. I'm hopeful that as any good game should do, if the design of the skill progression is good, which I have a lot of confidence in this one that it is. By the mid game to end game, I should be better at the game. I should just by playing it and trusting it, I should have learned those skills. I think part of my soul searching comes down to, and I will admit this is psychological, but the experimentation and the discovery that you're gonna find in how to use these mechanics and skills together is generally experimentation and kind of trial by fire, trial by error, trial and error based. So you're gonna die a lot to figure out. At least I am. To figure out how to best do a certain thing, especially in some of the harder levels where there's no floor or something like that. So it's kind of unforgiving in the way that you do that. And then to speak to the game over screen, which as a little anecdote, I was listening to DLC today, an older episode or a couple episodes ago, and they were talking about Odyssey, and I guess they'd announced for Odyssey that there is no game over screen, that you lose coins when you die. But you never get a game over screen in that game. And so they were kind of just went into this interesting little debate about that and about what game over screens mean and how are they relevant today or not, et cetera, et cetera. But it just was funny because the night before I had forgotten about how that resource works and had gotten one and had not saved and was like started back all the way back from the beginning. And I was like, oh no.
Well, that was that was my worry. Playing an old Super Mario game is that, Super Mario Brothers, you run out of lives. You start at World 1-1 again.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
and one of the things about those games, they had a lot of shortcuts to get you forward and things like that. And this a game I don't think does, but at least that I've found.
Well, this has save games.
But yes, this has checkpoints. This has save games. One of the things I expect I'll do going forward is explore into a level, understand the new mechanics that they're introducing in each world or island or however they're organized, each handful of platforming levels, and kind of try to understand those before I make a save. I'm going to hold on to that save that I made at the end of this section where I have 8 lives or 9 lives or wherever it is, so that I can just explore and feel comfortable with, oh, okay, I need to go here to unlock stuff in the rest of the world, and then, okay, I'll get good at going to do that, and then I'll save after that, and then I'll go and get good at the other part, and then I'll be comfortable. So I think that it's kind of teaching you that kind of approach, which gives you a good balance between value for the money that you're investing. Certainly, one thing is that we've not really talked about ever on the podcast is, except obliquely, but directly is the dollar value of games, at this time in the early 90s versus a dollar value of games today, and how many hours you could expect, and how game designs were tuned to that. And of course that we have talked a little bit about the influence of the arcade on that, where it was, 25 cents for 3 lives or what have you, and how that carried forward into the, the early, the home console era. So there's a lot to unpack there.
And go ahead.
No, and I think that will kind of come out as we talk about this design. I think this is a game which is attacking in a different way what other games attacked. I've played, in the past 5 years, I played Crash Bandicoot, and it does a different thing to kind of attack this problem, where it basically gives you code words to let you start later.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a different sort of bridge to this kind of approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's just another approach, and I think that at the time nobody really knew what to do in terms of making people not have to play the first 20 levels or whatever 100 times in order to get to the end of the game.
Yeah. Well, we tolerate different things now, right? And I think that's why I brought up that DLC conversation, because I think it is an interesting debate and a sign of the times when you have a Mario game that chooses to still have an economy like coins, and you lose those coins. And they actually made an interesting point where, in GTA 5, when you die, you go back to the hospital and you lose money, so you don't really have a game over state either. And, those two games in some ways couldn't be farther from each other, though it sounds like maybe they're closer than we think. But it's just, it's like a sign of the times when even Mario is kind of switching things up in that regard. And we just tolerate different things these days, so maybe that's why they're modernizing some, or I don't know. And the interesting thing is they had a good debate about, like, no, it's not that game over screens are gone for good. Well, at least this is what Christian was saying. It's just that some games still should appropriately use them, like, Dark Souls came up or whatever. I was
going to say Dark Souls.
So there's still a place for them. It's just, you now have a choice, when maybe back in this era it wasn't as much of a choice, though arguably you could say Zelda Link to the Past, was a little softer in that regard. So, yeah, I don't know. But I guess my final thought on just kind of my soul searching is, I guess I'm trying to think of a way to voice what I mean. I don't think I'm doing a good job, but I think the games I've become drawn to over time, and RPGs are another big genre for me too.
Yes, because of course you could never get to the end of one of those and be unable to continue.
Yes.
Snide remark. Insert snide remark here.
Yeah, well done. No, I guess I like a balance between skill and tactics, is maybe the way I'd summarize it. More of a balance. I like when those are blended, not evenly, but they're kind of a little bit more balanced. And I feel like there are definitely like ways you can plan ahead and strategize a little bit, I guess, in Mario based on what you are bringing into the level from the previous level or something like that. But it's a lot about memorization, and it's a lot about skill and kind of that twitch kind of skill, and it indexes so heavily on that. It's just, yeah. So I don't know. It's been an interesting session.
I feel like this is a thing that we're going to come to back again and again over the next few episodes. But for now, don't worry. It's not that you have died. We're just going to come back after a break.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back from the break. We've talked a little bit about Super Mario World off air. We've talked a little bit about sort of things that we're going to talk about in the future, which are going to include things like Miyamoto and Koji Kondo's music and a lot of stuff. So I don't want people to think we have left those behind as introductory topics. I think there's a lot more to talk about there, and we'll get to it. We promise.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So much more.
In the meantime, as we like to do, we've already spent almost 50 minutes or close to an hour on this. We want to talk a little bit of email and feedback, and I gave you the first one.
Nambulous. My take on the next thing from Half-Life.
I'm pretty sure Nambulous is his real name.
Yeah, most likely.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
Probably French, Latin of some kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, go.
Hello. In DGC episode 70, you talked about the next thing for Half-Life and how a lack of this might be the reason which is preventing them from finally doing Half-Life 3. To that, I have to say that it seemed always fairly obvious to me what that thing for Half-Life 3 would have to be. In Portal, they essentially went out of their way to establish that all of this is taking place in the Half-Life universe, referencing Black Mesa and whatnot. They really didn't have to do this, and Portal would have been a fantastic game on its own. So I always expected Half-Life 3 to be about Gordon and Shell meeting up and combining forces. Valve has also been in favor of putting co-op in their games, which makes this feel so natural. And so Half-Life 3 would essentially be a co-op campaign with Gordon and Shell. They could even do a 4-player co-op with Gordon, Shell, Alex Vance, and Barney as characters. By the way, I also haven't forgotten about Adrian Shepard, which I have forgotten who that is. So,
I have no idea.
the character not player controlled could be an AI. Also, something never really done well, with the exception of BioShock Infinite, maybe. Companion AI. Though I would say that Alex in Half-Life 2 is also pretty good companion AI. Just imagine the gameplay puzzles they could implement within the scenario. Gordon might have to put an object in the correct position with the gravity gun for Shell to open the portal on with her portal gun. They sure as hell could have their hands full building this. I don't believe it for a second that this wouldn't find a lot of players. This should easily qualify as a thing that would warrant a Half-Life 3. So, since Valve certainly can come up with ideas easily as good as mine, I can only imagine that there must be some other reason for them to abandon the series. Please keep it up. I have a lot of fun listening to every episode. Best regards, Nambulous.
Right. So Nambulous has a theory about what would work. And it's a good theory. Like, I don't disagree with any of the possibilities there, and I do think those are all, like, the combination of Chell and her her portal gun and the gravity gun, and also some of the stuff that showed up in Portal 2 as far as the different surface types, all that stuff seems like things that would be ripe for more exploration. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're even yet to a point where a purely co-op game makes it.
Not if that's the only way to play.
Right.
If to his point, if they were able to have an effective enough AI with the other character, a la right. Alex, then
as a guy who started as an AI programmer,
but that doesn't sound easy.
Yeah. Hey,
especially
good luck.
With those mechanics.
I welcome the singularity where we can, expect those computers.
I mean, Nambulous is not alone with this specific theory, by the way. Like this comes up from time to time, just in discussions, we have as developers and gamers and stuff, and there is some good logic to it. I think the only thing I would say that maybe is just my own personal opinion about how, though this does make a lot of sense, and combining portals and gravity together sounds amazing mechanically. The thing I would be a little bummed about is something that I don't remember who made this up or where it came from. It may have even been myself. I don't remember. But it was something that we used to call the Chewbacca effect at Lucas, where there's a little bit of sort of disappointment when the universe feels very small. And the reason we called it the Chewbacca effect was that in episode 3, it turned out Yoda knew Chewbacca from the Battle of Kashyyyk from the past. And that never came up in, Empire Strikes Back or whatever.
Is this in one of the movies?
This is literally, Yoda rides Chewbacca's back in episode 3. Out of to safety. And you're like, wait, I
should have watched that at some point.
Yeah, and so it's just this kind of concept that the universe is so small.
I'm not going to watch that.
No, it's okay. You don't have to watch it. You see my point, though, right? Where,
no, I get it. I mean,
two characters that don't.
The whole universe seems to revolve around the Skywalker family. I mean, I get it.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that though mechanically would be interesting, if Gordon and Shell did combine forces, it seems a little too convenient and too small. Of a world. And my impression, which I haven't played Portal in a while, but in Portal 1 and 2, that those references, I think, are the way I interpreted it, at least as a player, is they bring the worlds closer together, but just enough of a hook to feel like it's a well thought through, fiction, but not to take it literally. Because my impression was that maybe that Portal was actually far in the future, or far in the past, maybe, or something, that there's no way that Gordon and Shell would actually ever be able to meet. But it was just enough of a connection where you're like, oh, there's some fiction Bible out there that somebody's actually, which definitely is most likely not the case, but that someone's thought all this through.
All that Mark Laidlaw has been doing.
Well, Mark
of Hawaii.
Mark might have something there, where he's figured it all out, but we'll never know now. But
I
you know what I mean?
With you. I do feel like the world gets very small. I mean, there are a lot of challenges that you point out. One is we'll just have the 2-player, 3-player, 4-player game have AI characters that do what you want,
with puzzles.
Yeah. That's the hard part. I've played some games that had AI companions where I was just frustrated to death. Like, I loved, and I'm going to bring up some old PS2 titles here because we're a classic games podcast, but I loved, now I can't remember the original title. No, that's good. No, Rise of the Kasai was the sequel, but the first one, it had this sort of hand, it looked very sort of Polynesian Islander. Mark of Cree. Yeah. So Mark of Cree had a single-player game. It was a lot of this sort of mix of stealth and third-person action adventure, and then there was
great game.
Yeah, terrific game. Great aesthetic choices. Maybe we'll play that someday. Needs a remaster. Anyway, then there was Rise of Kasai. And in Rise of Kasai, most of the game is that sort of AI-assisted co-op where you're either playing the main character or the character's sister, and then you get to a point later in the game where if that AI isn't good enough, you fail.
Mm-hmm.
That is the point of the game where I put it down because I could not get that AI to survive. Like, the AI had to survive.
Yeah.
And that is the most frustrating problem in video games as a player and as a developer. I want the AI to be good enough to survive long enough that the player, the human person, can get through it. But I don't want them to win the game for that player.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so many games fail on the side of the AI doesn't succeed and you lose. And there's nothing you can do, and this was a class. I mean, it was like 11, I was 90% through the game and just wanted to kill myself from this level, just being horrible in terms of my ability to protect this AI that I couldn't control in any way.
Well, we played a game about this very concept and with Ico, right? And
yes.
The interesting thing there that I think is
but the rules are clear in Ico.
Yeah, no, that's what I was getting to. That I think it's an interesting counterpoint to the Gordon and Shell example, because what Nambulous is saying here is that each of those characters would be fully featured and have their kind of full faculties about what they could actually do in the world. And the important thing that Ico did was to your point, Brett, they were clear with the rules, but also the abilities of each characters were completely orthogonal from each other for the most part, where they actually needed to rely on each other for different things. So there wasn't this crossover where you had an expectation that that Ico was going to do something that her name is escaping me. What is the character's name?
That's fun.
Darn it. This is terrible. One of my favorite games. Yorda. That Yorda, that Yorda was going to do differently, right? So you knew what each of them were going to do, and you didn't have this expectation that Yorda was going to go in swinging a sword at the enemies, right? She needed you. So just really important design decisions there that they would have to do something like that with any sort of Half-Life situation.
Well, and the problem with a puzzle game is if you remove the combat, and so there was no real danger to Chell or to you or whatever, the problem then becomes, how much do you let that character hint? So if you choose a path that isn't going to lead to a solution, does that character then support you in that bad solution? Mm-hmm. There's some real thorny design problems there of I'm using the gravity gun, so I push some surface up to a place where it's not actually useful, but Chell could put a portal space on it or whatever. Does she do that if it's the wrong thing? It's a really it's a mind-bogglingly hard problem.
You could opt into that, right? You could give the player the ability to ask her.
Yes, you could give difficulty. There's things to do, but it's just...
Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
What's the natural thing to do? What feels super right? I mean, one of the things I feel like we talked about a lot with Half-Life and Half-Life 2 is that it always feels like you have a good sense of what to do. And when you add those variables of an AI, in theory, to how to solve those problems, I'm not saying it's not possible. And I have all the confidence in Valve in the world, but it's hard.
It sounds really exciting, but it's like the combination of elements that he describes in the mail are some of the hardest combinations of things you can put in together. It's like,
right. Absolutely.
And not to say that shouldn't be attempted. And if any studio should attempt something like that, it'd be them. But
I'm going to say Jonathan DeLuca, our friend from last time, who's learning to program and make his own levels. It should be him who does Halo Life 3 with Chell and Master Chief and Gordon.
Yeah, there's your fourth character.
There you go. You go to it. All right. I have an email. Thank you, Nameless. I have an email from Ross. It says, "Hey guys," he says, "sharing the love is his subject. I'm a longtime listener. I've been listening since the first episodes, and it didn't take long for this to become my favorite podcast." Oh.
Wow.
As a hobbyist game dev from just a wee lad in elementary school, I love hearing people so passionate about the industry, sharing anecdotes and talking shop. LucasArts was my favorite game company of all throughout my childhood, and learning of its demise was just about as heartbreaking as the destruction of the Star Wars expanded universe canon that I grew up with. R.I.P. By the way, please don't be afraid to talk about low-level stuff, more like the memory constraints and languages or engines used, and other things of that nature. I know it turns some people off, but it also turns others of us on. Okay. Well... taste is in the ear of the beholder. Anyway, I used to search for game dev podcasts every few months, but few of them really scratched whatever itch I was looking for until DGC. See, I actually rarely play games myself, and I find that whenever I do get the urge to do so, I play old games for which I am nostalgic, or indie games that attempt to recreate the magic. I love that you guys play and dissect these games, and it seems to sate my nostalgia even better than just periodically replaying them on my own. The thing that made me finally write in is to tell you about a speed run from the recent 2017 SGDQ, that's Super Games Done Quick, I think, that I really want you to watch. It is a swordless run, you heard me, of Link to the Past. And it gives a link. The run is incredible, the commentators are hilarious, the banter is great, and it is just all around entertaining. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the video after you watch it, and hope others do as well. As someone with very little free time of my own, I promise it's fully worth the hour and 20 minutes runtime. For bonus points, there's also the Jedi Outcast speedrun, another link, I'll put that in the show notes, which is done by a guy that is just too endearing and adorable to put into words, who energetically and excitedly self-narrates the entire time. I think the thing I like about speedrunning is similar to what I like about your podcast. I love seeing my favorite games dissected, and I love seeing them broken. Thank you for your time. Ross Haddon from Cincinnati, if that is your real name, which is in the email. P.S. Some recommendations to add to your presumably long list. Something in the aforementioned Jedi Knight series, Ratchet & Clank 2 Going Commando. Ratchet & Clank is something we may have to talk about someday.
Yeah.
Earthbound. He's playing his current favorite game, Undertale. Oh, he says, playing my current favorite Undertale as your bonus, which is only 4 or 5 hours long. That's a connection. Earthbound.
Yeah.
Sort of a
that's an interesting combo,
spiritual descendant. And maybe since you reference it so much, a Mario game like Super Mario World.
Yes.
Super Meat Boy as a bonus? Question mark? Okay. Anyway, PPS, who are you, fellow listener? And email John from Cincinnati. Find me. Okay, so that's a callback to a long time ago where we had John from Cincinnati. Okay. First things first, our unofficial speedrunning correspondent, whose name I have to look up because it's getting late and I'm tired. Phil Rosehill. Phil said we should check out that swordless run of Link to the Past.
I feel like that came up, yeah.
Yes, that came up a couple of weeks ago before SGDQ. So I will go and look that up again. Now there's a link for the video, so that's good.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't watch those, I mean, they raised 1.7 million this summer.
That's terrific.
For Doctors Without Borders for their most recent. I just heard that on another podcast on DLC actually.
Right.
Oh, and quick shout out.
I was gonna say we keep referencing that. That's Christian Spicer and
Jeff Kanata.
Kanata. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. Fun, and they cover like up to date stuff, not old stuff like us. So if you're looking for one that great guests and hosts, and they cover like up to the day stuff. And then Rebel FM gave us another shout out a couple episodes ago too. So thanks guys for that.
Oh yeah, thanks very much.
Also good.
Yeah, we love those podcasts. I'm in crunch, so I have a hard time keeping up. But yeah, we totally love those shout outs, and we'd like to return them. Jedi Outcast speed run also sounds pretty great. I have not played Outcast. I think I played a little bit of Academy. Did you play Outcast? I think it's
no, I played them all. Yeah,
Okay.
Outcast was after.
I think it's after Academy, right? It's
I may have those back because I think Outcast is still Kyle, but Academy you play
like some recruit or something.
Yeah.
Okay, I forget too.
Those two were both done by Raven, I believe.
Yes, they were. That's for sure. And one of the things about those two games is I can't play them because it makes me ill.
Oh, the engine.
The engine, the head bob. I think it's Quake 3.
Yeah, it is Quake.
It's Quake. And it's Quake 2 or 3, and it just between the way it moves and it's a thing for me. It's one of those things about like VR that I just can't imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I am so prone to motion sickness with certain engines and certain movements that I can't. I feel very afraid to put myself into a headset because I just feel like I would.
Yeah, I have definitely motion sickness issues with VR right now. Depends on the game, but yeah.
No, I mean I've had that issue with some Source Engine games. I've had that issue certainly with these Jedi Academy and Outcast games, and there are probably The Witness on my TV on a PS4 I couldn't play because until they recently updated it. Now I seem to be fine, but oh my god. And I don't know if that's just a thing that's gotten worse as I've gotten older, but I feel like those Jedi games I've never been able to play. But I will check out the video because I can watch a video. So thank goodness. So thank you, Ross Haddon. We'll try to hook you up with John from Cincinnati if we ever do hear from him. So thank you for your email. I have another one for you with a weird subject.
Yes, he explains it at the end, I guess. So, Sea of Peanut Butter is the subject from Aaron. I don't think that's his real name.
No way.
Hi, Tim and Brett. In one of your recent casts, you mentioned Shogo Mobile Armor Division and the Lithtech engine. It was just a fleeting comment in the conversation, but it caught my ear. I played some of those earlier Lithtech games, though I have forgotten about them over the years. I'm going to have to look for my Shogo and No One Lives Forever discs now. Yeah, No One Lives Forever, as a side note, is also really good. I thought it would be fun to give a shout out to some games you feel didn't get the recognition they deserved when they came out, or don't get the acknowledgement they should as we look back over the years. I have a few in various genres. He mentions Loom and the Dig from LucasArts, Rise of the Dragon from Sierra Dynamics, Giant Citizen Kabuto, and Realms of the Haunting from Interplay, Anachronox from Eidos, MDK from Shiny, Hexen and Heretic from series from Raven/id. That email subject just has nothing to do with anything. I just liked Tim's quote. Smiley face. And I'm forgetting my Sea of Peanut Butter quote. Do you remember what that was from?
Only a few episodes ago, and I explained that's what that was, because he also wrote a review, and I remember going, oh, wait, he said something like that.
I use peanut
Yes.
butter as a reference probably far too much in my daily life.
That that might be the quote I use to open a future episode. But yes, that's a strange thing. There are a couple of gems in here. Anachronox is one of those games I always wanted to play.
Yeah.
Never did.
Yeah, that was a good one. Reed's a big fan of that one too.
It's
He and I
no,
both.
I mean it's literally always been on my list of. I mean, since it came out, which is 15 years anyway.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's old.
yeah, at least that long.
That was
MDK.
Ion Storm, I think.
It was Ion Storm. Yes, it was after that storm from GIF 3 and before Daikatana. So it was.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of the and Deus Ex, of course. I think Deus Ex is the number one title, and Anachronox is the number two title that you need to play from the Ion Storm days.
Mm-hmm.
MDK is a great, interesting title because David Perry, who was the president of Shiny or founder, whatever, great, interesting designer who we probably should talk about at some point. I mean, he was a guy who was like, if you could give me like the one sentence or one phrase summary of your game that will make it. And for MDK, I think it was you can shoot a guy through the eye from a mile away or something like that. It was like a sniping paradise that you could do.
I
with
didn't
MDK.
play that.
I haven't played an MDK game either, but David Perry is just an interesting character. They also did Earthworm Jim. He says Giant Citizen Kabuto, but I'm pretty sure that was a Shiny. Oh no, they did that. Sacrifice is actually what I'm thinking of. That weird RTS title.
Yeah. Giants gets confused with another game that came out at the same time that I'm forgetting the name of.
Giants was Planet Moon.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's a Marin County, like closer to Sausalito type company. Oh my God, we're so inside baseball at this point. Anyway, there's a lot of interesting things here, and I love all of these suggestions, so I appreciate them airing. As
Do
well
you
as
have any
peanut butter
that you would call out as kind of under recognized?
Oh my God, I mean, I feel like some of the titles we talk about are a little underappreciated. I feel like Legacy of Kain is probably not as appreciated as it should be.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time remembering. I know
that's the thing about underappreciated titles is how do you remember them because they're underappreciated? I feel like Sly Cooper is a series that probably didn't get the attention it deserved.
One that comes to mind kind of randomly that I loved playing, especially in co-op, was Commandos. Do you remember that?
Yes, good title. Yeah.
IDOS, a tactical, not even turn-based. I guess it was like pause turn-based. I forget
It was
how
sort of Baldur's Gate style turn-based.
Yeah, but it was tactical combat. And so like World War II.
World War II, yes.
And everyone had a different class, and you could play it co-op, and we would play that at LucasArts back in the day, like after hours as co-op on the LAN. It was just the best time. The other one that comes to mind, that Tribes is a good one, yeah. Maybe not as under-recognized because it feels like it's a bit of a cult classic, but yeah, that's a good one. The other one that comes to mind that is maybe a personal thing, and maybe it's not necessarily recognized in any fashion, but Majestic is a game that I still have the box for. It's on my shelf.
That is a huge regret for me, Majestic.
Oh man, and it is.
I wish I had played it
together. It's a time capsule of just brilliance. Of I don't know, like way ahead of its time. Still not even achieved, right? And
I was gonna say it feels like a game that is. I mean, it's such a mix of ARG, but sort of real time and at your own pace thing that feels like it should be doable today. Way more so than it was at the time.
Yeah, but
between all the various social media channels we have and the ubiquity of text and phones is like not being costly. Right. So Majestic, for people who don't know, was an EA experiment. Right? It was EA.
Yeah. It was
sort of a conspiracy.
Neil Young, right? He was the producer on it. Yeah.
He was prior to Riccatello.
Yeah, this was before Riccatello, but Neil Young was the he basically spun off a side studio within EA to do kind of experimental stuff, and this was one
Okay.
of the things.
Okay.
But
And maybe also
it cost him a lot.
LMNO and things like that. I
Yeah,
mean, there was...
and then he started up NG Moko and was one of the early
okay.
one of the early iPhone game companies that saw the trend there in the early days. Anyway, yeah, I just followed him.
Anyway, so this was a game that in 2003 or 4-ish, and I'd have to look up the exact date.
It's somewhere around there.
It would call you on your cell phone. It would
fax
text you. It would fax you.
They had IM bots.
I'm sure it had email and IM, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you were
FMV.
And it was episodic.
FMV videos, puzzles, conspiracies.
It was such an amalgam of strange stuff. So it was like all the stuff that was in Deus Ex as far as conspiracy theories go.
Real actors, though. You're following is real.
Right. But it added on to that, decent FMV, and then all these other ways that it could reach out and touch you, the player.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, honestly, God, it's the one experience where I look back and I go, man, I wish I had tried that more. Because instead of ARGs, which are more like they throw out a lot of breadcrumbs that are complex and they expect lots of people to have to work together trying to find, this was more like one person working alone is going to have an experience, which is automated in lots of ways. It is so
there were crossover points, and then they came out on an episodic basis as well, so like a TV show, so you had to wait, right? But then if you didn't want to get things spoiled, you needed to play pretty quickly, so Reed is much better at this stuff than I am, so he kind of was always playing ahead of me, but we would compare notes and play together. I still have emails that game sent me saved, just for, and so does Reed.
Not from Bob Page 51?
No, we'll get there someday. Just calm down. When we play Deus Ex, we'll tell that story. But and then I have IM transcripts from some of those things where they had IM bots, where you're literally IMing with characters in the FMV, with bots for the characters. Right. And it was all this sort of backstory about this fake video game company. There was this conspiracy theory going, and they were making the game, and then their building burnt down, and I was just... But then the craziest story, which my wife will always hate me for, is it calls you occasionally based on what step you are in the episode. Like you go through these gates, essentially, and at some of them, they fax you something. Some of them, they'll call you on the telephone. And they called one night. I wasn't home. I was crunching for Republic Commander or something, or Jedi Starfighter.
Had to be Republic Commander.
They called the house, and of course, there's this shady voice on it, kind of threatening me that I know too much or something. And she picks up.
Oh, you know too much.
Yeah, she picks up and she's like, "What the F is going on?" And I got in trouble when I got home that night.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
From now on, I'm going to call when I call you. I'm going to hope that she picks up so that I can do something like that.
No, don't do it.
That is an excellent choice.
That game is something else, yeah. So really, fond memories, and nothing will ever be the same.
I'm going to throw one more out there from my PlayStation 1 days. Vagrant Story.
Yeah.
Great RPG.
You mentioned that a lot.
Yes, I've mentioned it occasionally. It's not a thing I think we'll get back to on the cast because I don't think it casts a long shadow, but it should. It should. Okay. I'm going to read the next email, and then it's getting late, so I think
we should call it
at that point. And someday we'll get back to the reviews. But anyway, we have Half-Life 2 bonus content from Sean Donovan. He says, "Hi guys, been listening to your podcast for months and look forward to a new installment every week. Really interesting hearing how developers disassemble legendary games and show what makes them tick. I think it works so well since you both are able to see the machinery that makes things work, but still experience surprise or have emotional reactions to them. During this week's discussion of Half-Life 2, I was waiting for you guys to mention the reintroduction of the crowbar when cataloging all the great nostalgia moments in the sequel. Which we should probably talk about.
I had a note for it, but I didn't.
I did too, and we didn't get to it. Anyway, back to Sean. He says, "I thought that one was especially clever because you've been weaponless, powerless for so long that getting your hands on it made you feel like you could take on anything from that point on. Mm-hmm. And it's the default weapon. The weapon that you're usually itching to replace at your first possible chance and only fall back on in moments of desperation. The fact that they could make you feel grateful for getting it was a neat trick. And then, I believe Barney has some quip about it being your old friend. They undercut the moment with the humor you mentioned, and you quickly feel deflated that your Excalibur is something found in every man's toolbox.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next game. You do a deep dive in, even planning on listening to some of the games you've played that didn't loom large in my imaginative landscape since you made the analysis so interesting to listen to. Thanks, and hope you have a long list of landmark games you want to hit ahead. Sean Donovan, San Francisco. Okay, thank you, Sean Donovan, if that is your real name. Yeah, that was a moment that I noted and didn't bring up. It felt, I'm going to be honest, a little corny.
A little what?
Corny.
Oh, corny. Okay.
Oh my God, what is wrong with you? Have you not seen your wife this week? What is wrong with you?
Brother. Okay. Oh, jeez. How many times have we said by the way?
I have said it fewer than you have.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot until just now. Yeah, it was a little corny. I mean, I guess it felt a little bit forced. I guess I know what you mean by that, but still, I remember, the one thing I will say about it is I feel like I remember thinking to myself, I don't have a weapon yet. I wonder when they're going to give me the crowbar. And then that scene happened. Yes. And it was like, man, those guys, they have their pacing down.
Exactly. Well, and it's a thing. And the other thing is that it's the sort of thing that could really interfere with the scene that happens beforehand. Right? So, I mean, there are a couple scenes that happen before that. One is when you first see Barney when you're at the train station. But the big one is with Dr. Kleiner and Alex and Lamar and Barney. And you're all in this area. And if you had a weapon, it would break everything. Right? Yeah. I mean, you could go bash on things and nothing would happen because the cutscene wouldn't progress if you did. So it would ruin everything if you had a weapon before that point. So I appreciate the tension that they build of and we talked about this in that episode, but I appreciate that tension of they build and build and build. But I will say, when he goes out and says, oh, hey, here's your old friend, or whatever he says, and he throws down this crowbar and you're like, okay, I mean, I personally, Tim, have a crowbar in my tool shed or in my basement right now. I mean, it's like, it's such a weird, okay, it's your old buddy, the crowbar. I was like, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's fucking...
Do you remember a show that was on TV? This would have been in the mid to late 80s called Mr. Merlin.
No.
Okay, so Mr. Merlin.
I'm younger than you, so I,
You're not young. God damn you. So anyway, there's this pilot episode of this show, which is Merlin in modern day, and he's going to find the next hero, right? And he's got like a mop in a bucket of cement that has hardened, and the kid who can pull out the mop from the bucket of cement is the new Arthur.
That sounds great.
In the pilot. That is what this moment with the crowbar felt like to me. I went and pulled out this totally quotidian thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, ta-da! You got the thing. So, for me, it doesn't land. I get it.
Yeah.
It connects, but at the same time, it's not a thing that I get particularly excited about.
I had fun with it. I liked, I mean, there was not nostalgia.
You would. I mean, you're younger than I am.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I'm more easily impressed, yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you, Sean. It is a moment that we both noted. We had different responses. Actually, I mean, the thing is that the moment right after that we did talk about is you're in the train yard, you're running around like crazy, and you don't really have an opportunity to use that weapon as a weapon. You just kind of use it as a tool to get through the box.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a touch.
It's interesting, interesting choice.
It is kind of an inversion right away. If it used to be the thing you used against the head crab zombies, but now it's like, oh, I can't do this. They've got a machine gun, right? I mean, what am I going to do?
You do, I think, to escape the firing, you do have to bash through some wood and stuff, right?
Yeah, so that's true. You have to break up some
kind of like desperate force, it's just really gratifying to use that thing.
It is.
So it's just like,
that is one thing about Half-Life weapons. They're all kind of they're gratifying to use for a lot of reasons. We talked about the way the barrels work and the way, different weapons work and the feedback. I mean, they really paid off on things that you use pay off, in a way that, damn it, now I'm using every other damn sentence. I still feel like I'm ahead of the game, but anyway, I apologize, our Guernsey listener. Okay, I'm going to read one review because we're never getting ahead of this if we don't read at least one.
All right, one more.
All right, this is one from Tacklock. He says, great podcast. He says, I love listening to DGC during the work week. Being a Python dev by day and recently working on learning Unity, the insight you all provide as you play through different games is extremely valuable. Love listening, and if you ever feel like doing a different style of game, I wouldn't mind hearing you take on something from the BattleTech universe.
That's the second time that's come up.
That has come up. I don't feel like it's come up from Tacklock, so because I went through and tried to connect these things together. Yeah, no, I think the other one said Mech Warrior specifically, but
yeah,
yes.
right. Yeah, So I have a connection there, and we might be able to get Jordan, who's one of the creators on.
Yeah.
He's in Seattle, so.
We should definitely look into that. I feel like that is a whole.
It's a whole nother.
It is. It's a whole. Mech Warrior 2 though seems like one of those games that was in the conversation in, I don't know, 1999 or whenever it came out, but it's interesting because it goes between simulation and action game in a way, right? I mean, you have those.
Yeah. No, it's bridging. It's starting to bridge that
earlier than that. Mech Warrior 2 was 95, so it's definitely. Yes, there's something there where you're working this whole machinery. You have control over left, right. It has some TIE Fighter in it in that respect.
Yeah.
But it's its own thing, and it's definitely worth looking.
It's a sim, yeah. I mean, it's hardcore.
It's a mess.
I remember bouncing off of it back in those days.
I did. Yeah. I did for sure. And I think that's why we probably haven't talked about it very much. But it's one of those games that it does have its own shadow, at least reaching to Zone of the Enders feels kind of in that vein. I don't know if you ever played that, those sort of PS2
I didn't.
Thing. And then certainly latter day mech things. Steel Battalion.
Mech Assault,
Mech Assault, which is a more action-oriented version of that sort of series, but all of it is a thing. So it's definitely something we've mentioned and we've thought about. So our appreciation, Tacklock, if that is your real name. So. Okay, so for next time, all the emails, I should say, have come to us from devgameclub@gmail.com, and you can give us reviews on podcasts on iTunes or on your Apple device if you use one. If you don't, and you send a review, please point me in the direction of where it shows up. I'm subscribed to all the iTunes ones, but if there are Google and Amazon and etc., reviews, I don't know how to subscribe to them, and you may need to give me a little help. So, that said, thank you very much. For next time, we're going to play the next couple of levels / worlds / however you talk about
sections, islands, whatever. Yeah.
I don't know that they're islands. I feel like the first one is an island, and maybe after that they're not. I don't really know.
Lands? Maybe?
Yes,
like
land
donut?
areas.
Don't they actually say...
It's a world with multiple
lands. You're going to go to Donut Land. I think they say.
Donut Plains. We're headed to the Donut Plains next. After that, it's the Vanilla Dome. I can only hope that it's not the chocolate plains and the strawberry clouds after that. But we are going to at least play next time the Donut Plains and the Vanilla Dome. And after that, I'm going to be in Seattle, the Seattle area, to record the next episode with Tim. So in a couple episodes, we're going to be together in one place and probably not kill each other. No promises. But we'll try to...
For the first time, a historic event.
It will be for the podcast. I was going to say for the first time. We did ship 3 games together.
Yeah, no, I mean
for the first time. I'd love to try to put something in place for that so that we can play something different. And we have some ideas. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
maybe something
co-op-wise, you mean?
Something co-op that we can just say, you know what, we'll push this to the side for a moment and talk about something else.
Bonus episode or something.
A bonus episode in the middle of a podcast. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah. So we're at least for next time gonna do the Donut Plains and the Vanilla Dome. And yes, Mom, I feel really silly saying those things. I'm sorry, but that's what we're gonna try to do.
It's Mario.
It's Mario, and we've been jumping on Goomba's heads. Not really, but we've been jumping like Dino's Dragon. I don't even know what they are. There's all these enemies.
We're on Dinosaur Island, right? Like, isn't that where
we're on Yoshi Island, and there's been those like
no Dinosaur Land. In the intro, they talk about you're welcome to Dinosaur Land or something.
That's like true. They do say that, but it's actually Yoshi's Island, and when you go to a level, it's called Yoshi's Island.
Yeah, we're the small one, but I'm wondering if the whole area.
Oh, yeah, then that may be true. I didn't.
That's why Yoshi's here. That's why there's.
Oh my god! I'm looking ahead. There actually is a chocolate island. I feel terrible. I was joking. Oh my god. Oh, okay. Anyway, that is us. That is us for the week. We're gonna say goodnight. You can find us at DevGameClub on Twitter. You can send us email at devgameclub@gmail.com. As you can tell, we love having your email. You can find me at Brett_Duville and him at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Thank you very much. No one shot him as far as I know, and it wasn't a dream. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks so much, and good night.
Good night.